Last September, my husband Mike and I moved into a house in the suburbs. He wanted to live closer to his mother, Gloria, who was dying of cancer. He had taken a month off from work, and every day he went over to Gloria's house and helped take care of her. Even though Gloria's hospice wasn't that far from our house, I never went. I never even met Gloria. Mike said that she was too sick for me to meet. I felt awful about it, but I honored my husband's wishes. Because I worked online, I ended up staying all day in our new house while Mike was with his mom. I didn't have any friends in the area, so I felt very isolated and alone. One evening, I was home alone when an older woman came to the door. She was very normal looking. At first, I thought she was a neighbor who wanted to invite me to something, but then she said that her name was Gloria. She was Mike's mom. I instantly let her in and offered her some tea. She looked extremely healthy for a woman on her deathbed. We sat at my coffee table, and I asked her, "Does Mike know you're here?" If Mike was at Gloria's house right now, did he know that Gloria had wandered all the way over here? I've heard stories about old people that leave their houses without telling anyone and walk to some pretty random places. Mike has no idea, Gloria said. I haven't seen him in 7 years. She said that. I knew that this was some kind of scam. I stood up and told her to leave. She begged for me to let her stay so she could finally see her son again. I told her that I knew she was lying. Then she pulled out her wallet and showed me a photo of her and Mike together. Mike must have been 12 or 13 at the time. When that wasn't enough to convince me, she pulled out 6 more photos, each one showing her and Mike from different time periods. I couldn't believe it. This meant that the woman was telling me the truth, and that Mike had been lying to me about why we moved here and where he went each day. I didn't know how to handle the information, so I told Gloria to leave. She did. When Mike got home, he seemed really stressed. I didn't confront him at first. I just casually asked what he did that day, and he told me that he spent all day taking care of his mother. I knew that was a lie, but I didn't say anything. The next morning, Mike left at his usual time. I waited until he was at the end of the street before I got in my car and followed him. He ended up parking in front of an old house just 3 streets over. I parked next to some bushes and watched from the car as he approached the house. He knocked on the door, and a beautiful blonde woman answered. They talked for a while on the porch, and then she pulled him inside. Obviously, he was having an affair with this woman. His whole story about taking care of his mother was just an awful lie. I drove back home. That night, I planned to tell him everything, but he didn't come home. I waited for 30 minutes, feeling myself getting angrier by the minute. When he finally called and said that he'd be late, I assumed his secret girlfriend was keeping him busy. I was so mad, but I didn't dare bring it up over the phone. I needed to see his face when I told him that I knew. So instead, I innocently asked him why he was going to be late. He said that his mom had an episode, whatever that meant, and he wasn't sure how long he needed to be there. Fine, I said. Bye. Immediately after, I hung up on him. I heard someone walking around in the front yard. I looked through the window and saw a dark figure wandering around the bushes. "Hey," I shouted. "Go away." The figure stepped out of the shadows, and it was Mike's mother again. She walked to the house and looked at me through the window. She apologized for coming back at this time of night, and she asked if I could let her in again. I considered telling her no, but then I thought about how perfect it would be to have Mike's real mother there when I confronted him about his lies, so I opened the door and welcomed her in. She sat on our sofa, instantly making herself comfortable. I asked if she wanted anything, and she just told me to sit next to her. All she wanted was to talk, and she had a lot of questions for me. I sat next to her, and she started to ask me about my relationship with Mike. How did we meet? How long were we together? Were we happy? I answered all of her questions, except for the last one. Then she asked where Mike was right now, and I didn't have the heart to lie to her. Mike was the one cheating. It wasn't my secret to bear, so I told her that Mike was hooking up with another woman, and telling me that he was busy taking care of his mother. Gloria jumped to her feet, grabbed her hair, and screamed so loudly I was sure the neighbors heard. She wouldn't stop, so I stood up and tried to give her a hug to calm down. She pushed me back. Then she grabbed a vase and slammed it against the side of her head. It broke against her temple. She picked up one of the jagged shards and pointed it at me like a knife. "You're a liar," she screamed. "What? My beautiful baby boy would never treat a woman like that." Even though this woman was much smaller and older than me, I did not want to mess with her. She looked crazy enough to do some real damage. As she swiped the broken shard at me, I ran into the bedroom and locked the door. I pulled out my phone and dialed Mike's number. I could hear Gloria scratching to the other side of the door. She screamed at me again, but I couldn't tell what she was saying. Mike answered and asked if he could call me back. It wasn't a good time. "No," I said. "Your real mother is here, and she's gone insane." "What?" he shouted into the phone. "She's at the house. Don't move." Then he hung up. He arrived 5 minutes later. I was still hiding in the bedroom, but I could hear the front door open. I could hear the woman scream at Mike as he calmly tried to talk her down. Then I heard a loud thud and shattering glass. It sounded like she attacked him too. No matter how angry I was at Mike, I had to help him. I opened the door and saw Mike lying on the floor. Gloria was crouched over him, squeezing his throat with both hands. I ran to pull her off, but then someone else grabbed me from behind. "Don't interfere," she said. I turned around and saw the blonde woman, Mike's mistress. Why was she here? Now that I was looking at her up close, I saw that she was older than I thought. She wore a name tag and a stethoscope. She wasn't Mike's mistress at all. She was a nurse. The woman pulled out a syringe and walked toward Gloria. She was going to inject the old woman with some kind of sedative. She tried to grab Gloria's arm, but then Gloria elbowed her in the stomach and she dropped the syringe. I had to help. While Gloria kept strangling Mike, I ran over and grabbed the fallen needle. In the leg. Mike screamed. In the leg. I injected whatever medicine into Gloria's leg, and she instantly flopped onto the ground, asleep. Mike struggled to catch his breath. Then he stood and carefully lowered his mother's unconscious body onto the sofa. He turned toward me. "Now do you understand why I don't let you see my mother?" He explained that he'd been taking care of his mother all this time, but he'd lied to me about her sickness. She didn't have cancer. She had 8 different psychological conditions that led to lying, stealing, and extremely violent behavior. The blonde woman was one of several full-time nurses that took care of her. He said that she'd escaped the day before, which was when I first met her, and then tonight she escaped again. He had no idea she tracked down his new house until I called him. I guess he'd mentioned our address once to his mother, and she memorized it. The blonde woman walked over and checked my arm, which had gotten scratched up in the struggle. Then she and Mike carried Gloria back to the car. It's been 6 months now, and Mike has finally moved his mother into a high-security facility. She hasn't escaped from it yet, but I think it's only a matter of time. I know she'll try to come back, but I pray that she never will. I checked my watch, tapping my feet against the sidewalk with an irritated sigh. He was late. I hoped this wasn't someone trying to swindle me or mess with me. I'd always been funny about buying things off sites like Craigslist, since there were very few regulatory checks into the sellers of the items. I had no idea who I was meeting up with, apart from the slightly blurry picture of a young man. Maybe I should have done more research into who I was buying from before meeting up. At least he suggested a public place, rather than somewhere quiet and secluded. "I'm sorry to keep you waiting," a voice said from behind me. I turned, my gaze falling onto a much more defined version of that profile picture. He was older than I expected, maybe in his early to mid-30s, with close-cropped brown hair. I shrugged. I haven't been waiting long. I lied. 20 minutes was longer than I would have liked to have waited, but there was no point making a big deal out of it. He was giving me a good deal, after all. I'm parked just up the street, he explained. I had the mirror in the car. I frowned my brow. Why didn't he just bring it with him? Did he expect me to follow him to his car? I glanced around the street. The road was fairly busy at this time of day, and there were a couple people walking around. If he tried anything funny, at least I wouldn't be alone. Did you drive here? He asked when I said nothing. I nodded, jerking a thumb to the old Ford behind me. Yep. He nodded, his eyes roaming over my face more intensely than I would have liked. I subconsciously stepped back, breaking his focus. He cleared his throat. I can go grab the mirror, he said. I didn't want you waiting for me any longer. That's all. I stuck my hands back in my pocket, sighing softly. No worries, I'll come and get it. It saves you walking all the way back. I knew I shouldn't be so nice, especially after him keeping me waiting. But I wanted to be done with this transaction so I could get back home. Meeting up with strangers like this always made me antsy anyway, especially when they were men. It comes with being a woman, I suppose. He started walking back towards his car, and I walked a little behind, maintaining a good distance between us. He didn't seem the sort to try anything, but you could never really tell. His car was a red pickup with some old carpets rolled up in the back. He noticed my gaze. Oh, I'm doing some renovating. That's why I wanted to get rid of this, he said as he reached back into the seat and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. He peeled it back to show me that it was the mirror that I was expecting. Perfect, I said, digging my purse out of my pocket. 20, right? He shook his head. Knock it down to 15, he said, as an apology for being late. I blinked at him. Are you sure? He nodded, offering me a smile, and I'd handed him the money, accepting the mirror in return. Thank you. No problem. Pleasure doing business with you. I merely smiled and said goodbye before turning around and heading back to my car. By the time I glanced back, he already had driven away, which I was thankful for. Didn't have to worry about being followed. I drove back home, relieved that it had gone so smoothly. The last thing I needed was to meet up with some creepy guy, but he seemed all right in the end. When I got home that afternoon, I finally unwrapped the mirror and hung it up on my wall. I'd recently repainted and refurbished my bedroom, and the mirror had been a perfect finishing touch to match the rest of the decor. It looked brand new as well, which was even better. It wasn't till much later in the evening, when I was in bed with the lights switched off, that I saw the small blinking light coming from somewhere in my room. It was a reddish hue. At first, I thought it might have been some type of reflection from outside, but my curtains were closed, and it didn't seem like it came from a car or a street lamp. I sat up, reaching for the lamp beside my bed, but as soon as the warm glow spread around the room, the light disappeared. Maybe I'm just imagining it. I switched the light back off, waiting for my eyes to readjust to the dark. There it was again, a faint red light, blinking at me from somewhere in the room. My eyes found it on the opposite wall, and I kept my gaze on it, while simultaneously reaching for the light switch. I flicked it on and blinked. I was looking at the mirror, the new one I had just bought earlier this day. Why was there a red light coming from it? Nausea crept from my throat as the realization struck me. There was only one explanation I could think of. A camera. There was a camera in the mirror. That's what the red light was. It was recording, which meant when I got dressed earlier, the camera had recorded everything. The camera and whoever was watching on the other side. That disgusting creep. The light flicked off suddenly, and I shook my head. He must have realized that I figured it out. It didn't matter anyway. There was no way I was keeping this now. I pulled the mirror off the wall and headed downstairs to throw it in the trash. I heard the glass crack as it hit the side of the kitchen bin, but I didn't care. I wasn't having that thing in my house anymore. I was about to head back up to bed when movement in the corner of my eye made me turn around. A scream immediately tore from my throat. Someone was standing outside the kitchen window, looking in. I recognized the face immediately. It was the man who sold me the mirror. What the hell? He followed me here. But I checked. He drove away already. Unless the red light wasn't a camera at all, but a tracking device. He grinned at me through the glass, his dark eyes flashing as he touched the window with his fingers. Panic threw me through my veins. I turned and ran upstairs, fumbling for my phone. I called the police, my hands shaking as I dialed the emergency number, and almost dropped the phone when I heard something thump downstairs. Was he in the house? Oh my God. I ran into the bathroom, locking myself in when I relayed my address to the dispatcher, begging for them to hurry up. I hid in the bathroom when I heard the sirens. By the time the police came, the man was nowhere to be found, and the mirror was gone. Back in May of 2010, while in desperate need of cash, I agreed to house sit for one of my old high school teachers. He had contacted me via Facebook and asked me if I would be willing to water his plants, collect his mail, and clean up the place while he went out of town for a few days. He didn't specify where he was going, but he agreed to pay me $400 for 2.5 days, with half up front, so I agreed. I never really liked him in high school. He was teaching classic literature, and he always seemed to enjoy pointing out any illustrations that in any way featured nudity. His eyes always seemed hungry, and he tended to wheeze like he was out of breath, even though he was kind of a small guy. My friends and I used to refer to him as Mr. Lip-Tit. When I arrived at his place, the key was beneath the mat, and $200 were in an envelope on the kitchen table. I turned on my music, watered the plants, cleaned, and vacuumed the ground floor, and made myself dinner. I found his house to be extremely boring. It was filled with old books, stacks of newspapers, and ancient-looking furniture that didn't really look comfortable to sit in. I settled into my sleeping bag on the guest bed, but I had a hard time staying asleep. It seemed that every 5 minutes there was another strange noise coming from the house, and it would put me on edge. The following morning, I went back to my own house, had breakfast, and took a shower before coming back and cleaning the second floor. Upon entering the guest bedroom, there was the faint smell of something in the air that definitely had not been there before. And what's more, I could have sworn that my sleeping bag was in a slightly different position when I had left it that morning. I started getting a bad vibe. I decided that night that I would sleep downstairs in the living room. I finished cleaning just after 10 p.m. I made some popcorn and enjoyed some cable TV, which I didn't have at my place. Around 11, I shut off the TV, wrapped myself up in my sleeping bag, and tried to drift off. I was tossing and turning for a bit, and just as I began to doze off, there came a click of the doorknob turning in the other room. I glanced over, and I swear by any god you choose, Mr. Lip-Tit emerged from the pantry wearing only his socks. He then slowly turned the corner and made his way upstairs. I grabbed my phone and my keys and exited out the back door quietly. I ran around front to get into my car and sped home, where I immediately called the cops. I didn't know exactly how to explain the situation to them. I mean, he wasn't breaking and entering. It was his house. But when I explained to the operator that he had deceived me into thinking that he was gone, they sent out a patrol car. I had to collect the stuff that I had left at his house anyway. When the police arrived, Mr. Lip-Tit answered the door wearing my sleeping bag over his shoulders. The police discovered a butler's cupboard, which was a secret room in the pantry that I wasn't aware of, where he had been hiding with a digital camera. He had taken a few dozen photos of me all around the house, most of which when I was sleeping. I showed the police the Facebook messages he sent me, assuring me that he would be out of town, and they arrested him. I collected all my remaining stuff, but left the sleeping bag. I didn't waste any time getting a restraining order against him. Mr. Lip-Tit made bail, but actually died of a heart attack a few weeks later after being rear-ended in his car at a stoplight. I never got the rest of my money.